The morning sun poured through the worn wooden windows of the little cafe, casting warm golden rays that danced softly on the weathered tables and the faded floorboards. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of old books and polished leather chairs, wrapping the room in a comforting embrace. This was Lynn's sanctuary, a humble haven in the heart of the small town of Mason, a place where time seemed to slow, and the harshness of the world could momentarily fade away. Lynn moved quietly behind the counter, her hands steady despite the weight of the day ahead. The cafe wasn't just a business to her. It was a refuge she had carefully built, a place where those worn down by life could find a flicker of peace. Every chipped mug, every cracked tile told a story. Here, in this warm embrace, the ghosts of the past found solace. For many of the town's veterans, battered by battles both seen and unseen, this cafe was more than just a place to grab a drink. It was a harbor of understanding, a silent acknowledgement of pain and survival. The bell above the door jingled softly, announcing the arrival of familiar faces, old friends and quiet heroes who found strength in these worn walls. Lynn greeted each one with a gentle nod, a soft smile, and sometimes a knowing look that said more than words ever could. These men and women came not to talk about glory or war stories, but to simply exist without judgment, to be seen without pity. As Lynn poured a cup of black coffee for Mr. Carter, a weathered veteran with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much, she felt the weight of unspoken battles lingering in the air. The cafe hummed quietly with the soft murmur of hushed conversations and the comforting clink of cups. It was a fragile peace, delicate yet fiercely guarded. Lynn's heart ached in a way only those who understand quiet suffering could feel. She wasn't a soldier, but she carried their stories in her soul, honoring their silent scars with every warm smile and every offered seat. Here, beneath the soft glow of worn lamps and faded photographs of soldiers long gone, the world felt kinder. Here Lynn's cafe was home. The afternoon sunlight waned, casting long shadows that stretched across the cafe floor, when the storm quietly arrived. It wasn't the weather, outside the sky remained clear, but a sudden wave of tension that rippled through the room like a dark cloud creeping in. Lynn noticed it first in the tightened jaws and nervous glances of the usual patrons. Then she saw them, two rough figures stepping into the cafe's gentle warmth, their presence like a harsh slash cutting through the peaceful quiet. Min, a young man with restless eyes and a past heavier than most could bear, sat near the corner with Shadow, an older war veteran whose quiet strength was a fortress of unyielding calm. They were different, Min with his bruised spirit and Shadow with his battle-worn silence, but both had found refuge here in Lynn's cafe, a fragile bubble where judgment was absent and hearts could breathe. But today that refuge was under siege. The intruders prowled near Min's table, voices low but laced with menace. Words like poison spilled into the air, accusing, threatening. Lynn's breath caught. She knew this kind of cruelty. How quickly it could ignite, how swiftly it could destroy the fragile peace they all fought to preserve. Her gaze sharpened, fierce and unyielding. She would not allow her cafe, her sanctuary, to become a battleground. Without hesitation, Lynn stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute, carrying the weight of unspoken promise. "This is a place of respect," she said, her eyes locking onto the aggressors with a quiet fire. "You will not bring your darkness here." The room held its breath as Lynn stood between them and the fragile souls she had vowed to protect. Min's hands trembled slightly, but he didn't back down. Shadow's eyes, deep and steady like stormy seas, watched the scene unfold, a silent shield ready to rise if needed. Lynn's heart pounded fiercely, not just for herself, but for the wounded spirits who found safety within these walls. The aggressors hesitated, caught in the unexpected strength of a woman who carried no weapon but her unwavering dignity. Lynn's presence was a beacon in that moment, an unspoken reminder that kindness and courage could still stand tall in a world that often seemed determined to break them. The tension slowly dissolved as the intruders retreated, the fragile calm returning like a soft breath. Lynn's hands relaxed, but the fire in her eyes remained, a quiet vow never to let darkness claim this little sanctuary. Min looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Shadow gave a subtle nod of approval, and the cafe exhaled, a shared heartbeat of resilience and hope. In that moment, Lynn wasn't just a cafe owner. She was a guardian of broken souls, a defender of light in the gathering dusk. And in the quiet warmth of her beloved cafe, the battle for peace was far from over, but it had been fiercely, defiantly fought. The morning light that usually spilled gently through the cafe windows felt suddenly cold, as if the warmth of yesterday had been swept away by an unforgiving chill. Lynn arrived as usual, carrying the quiet hope that today might bring a little peace, a little normalcy. But the moment she stepped inside, the air shifted, thick with unspoken accusations and a tension that pressed heavily against her chest. Her manager's face was stern, eyes sharp and unreadable, like a judge about to deliver a verdict without mercy. There was no greeting, no small talk, only the weight of words that cut deeper than any blade. "We have to let you go," he said flatly, voice void of empathy, as if erasing her from the cafe story was merely a routine task. Lynn stood frozen, the ground beneath her feeling unsteady, the familiar walls suddenly alien and cold. She struggled to find her voice to plead her case, but the words tangled and slipped away, swallowed by the crushing unfairness of it all. Questions swirled in her mind like a storm. Why now? After everything she had given. After the battles she fought to keep this place safe, to protect the people who had nowhere else to turn. The bitter sting of betrayal burned fiercely, hotter than any wound. Lynn's hands clenched into fists, not out of anger, but from the raw ache of injustice. She had always believed that kindness and dedication mattered, that standing up for others would not be punished. Yet here she was, cast aside, dismissed like a shadow no longer wanted in the light. The faces of Min and Shadow flashed before her eyes, their quiet gratitude, their fragile hope, and the weight of what this loss meant for them settled heavy in her heart. Her footsteps echoed hollow as she gathered her things, each movement a silent scream against the cruelty of fate. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to the fracture left behind. Lynn's mind raced with doubts and fears, but beneath the sorrow, a spark refused to die. She was more than a job, more than a position on a roster. She was a guardian of something far greater than herself. As she walked away from the cafe, the place that had been her sanctuary, a fierce determination took root. They could take her job, but they could not take her spirit. Not yet. Lynn's heart ached with loss, but also burned with a quiet fire, a promise to return, not as someone broken, but as someone who would fight back with every ounce of courage she possessed. In that moment of cruel dismissal, Lynn understood that her true battle was just beginning, and the road ahead, though uncertain and steep, was one she would walk with unwavering resolve. Lynn's days after losing her job were painted in shades of uncertainty and quiet despair. The cafe, once her refuge, now felt like a distant memory, a chapter abruptly closed. Yet, just as the darkness threatened to swallow her resolve, a flicker of light emerged from the most unexpected place. The military community she had once been a silent part of, a past she had long kept guarded beneath layers of ordinary life. It began with a letter, crisp and official, bearing the insignia of a unit she had served with years ago. As her fingers trembled, breaking the seal, a rush of memories flooded her. Of camaraderie forged in hardship, of battles fought side by side, and of a brotherhood that transcended time and place. The words inside were simple yet profound, a recognition of her courage, her integrity, and an offer of support. The message was more than just paper and ink. It was a lifeline thrown across the chasm of her despair. Lynn felt a swell of emotion she hadn't dared to touch in weeks. Hope, pride, and an almost forgotten sense of belonging. They hadn't forgotten her, nor the sacrifices she had made, even if the world around her had turned a blind eye. Calls began to pour in from former comrades, voices thick with warmth and encouragement. Each conversation was a balm to her wounded spirit, reminding her that she was not alone. They spoke not only of support but of plans, ways to stand beside her, to amplify her voice, to push back against the injustice that had tried to silence her. The military network, usually hidden behind discipline and duty, revealed itself now as a powerful force of solidarity and unwavering loyalty. One evening, as Lynn sat by the window, the city's lights flickering like distant stars, She realized the depth of what this support meant. It was more than just practical help. It was a restoration of faith, a rekindling of the fire within her. The men and women who had once marched shoulder to shoulder with her were now ready to walk with her through this new battlefield, where the enemy was not an external force but the quiet cruelty of betrayal and prejudice. Tears blurred her vision, not from sorrow but from the fierce gratitude that surged through her veins. She was being lifted from the ashes, not by chance but by a bond forged in the toughest of times. This unexpected alliance was her anchor, her shield, and her sword. With each passing day, Lynn felt the strength returning, steady, relentless like the tide. The injustice she faced was no longer hers to bear alone. Together, with the unwavering support of those who believed in her, she would face whatever lay ahead with a heart unbreakable and a spirit unyielding. The fight was far from over, but now she was ready. The air around Lynn seemed charged with a new energy, subtle but undeniable. The tides were shifting, not just in her life, but in the world that once felt so cold and indifferent. The support from her military brothers and sisters was no longer a quiet undercurrent. It was becoming a force that stirred conversations, challenged assumptions, and demanded attention. Slowly, the walls that had confined her began to tremble under the weight of change. Every morning, Lynn woke with a fragile hope, cautiously nurturing it like a delicate flame. News spread. Local community leaders, inspired by the courage of one woman and the strength of a united front, started raising their voices. Meetings were called, petitions signed, and stories shared. What had once been whispered in shadows was now declared in broad daylight. Lynn's ordeal became a mirror reflecting deeper injustices that many faced but few dared confront. Her story was no longer hers alone. It had blossomed into a symbol of resilience, of standing tall in the face of unfairness. One crisp afternoon, as golden light spilled across the city streets, Lynn found herself at the heart of a gathering. Faces of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs surrounded her, not as strangers but as allies. The crowd's energy was palpable, a collective heartbeat echoing with determination and hope. There were speeches filled with fire and tenderness, tears that mingled with laughter, and promises made to push forward until justice was more than just a word. But change, as ever, was complex and fraught with challenges. New obstacles surfaced like shadows at dusk, doubt whispered by skeptics, resistance from those threatened by the shifting balance, and moments when Lynn herself questioned if the path ahead was worth the pain. Yet, each hurdle only sharpened her resolve. She remembered the support that had lifted her from despair, the faces of those who believed in her unwavering spirit, and the quiet promise she had made to herself, to fight not just for herself, but for every unheard voice. In the midst of this turbulent transformation, a new chapter began to write itself, one of unexpected alliances, surprising friendships, and the slow but steady unraveling of injustice. Lynn's life, once defined by loss and silence, now echoed with purpose and a renewed sense of possibility. The journey was far from over, but with each step the path grew clearer, brighter. As twilight deepened and stars began to pierce the evening sky, Lynn felt a profound truth settle within her. Change may be slow and imperfect, but it is unstoppable when fueled by courage, solidarity, and an unyielding belief in what is right. The world was awakening, and so was she. In the wake of the upheaval, Lynn felt an awakening deeper than any she had known, a calling not just to survive but to create. From the fragments of her shattered world, she began to build something new, a community forged in shared struggle and quiet hope. It was more than just a gathering of people. It was a sanctuary, a beacon of trust where wounds could be tended and voices, long silenced, could finally rise. The walls of this new community were built not with bricks or mortar, but with empathy, respect, and a fierce determination to nurture each other's dignity. Every day, Lynn poured her heart into this endeavor. She listened, really listened, to stories of pain, resilience, and dreams deferred. In the warmth of her presence, strangers became friends, and friends became family. The coffee shop that once was her solitary refuge transformed into a vibrant hub where laughter mingled with tears, where debate sparked understanding, and where hope took root in the fertile soil of solidarity. There was something sacred in watching people come together, united by their shared humanity and their hunger for justice. The process was not without its struggles. Old fears and scars sometimes surfaced, threatening to unravel the fragile connections. But Lynn met these challenges with unwavering patience and grace, knowing that healing was never linear. She encouraged openness and vulnerability, fostering a space where mistakes were met with compassion, not judgment. In this community, every voice mattered, every story was valued, and every individual was reminded that they were not alone. Lynn herself grew in ways she hadn't anticipated. The pain of her own trials softened into wisdom and strength, tempered by the bonds she helped weave. She became a quiet leader, not through commands, but through the authenticity of her care and the steadfastness of her spirit. Her past, once a source of isolation, now stood as a foundation for connection and empowerment. With each meeting, each shared moment, the community pulsed with a new kind of energy, a collective heartbeat that refused to be broken. As the seasons turned, the impact of Lynn's community rippled outward, touching lives beyond the walls of their gathering place. Acts of kindness multiplied, support networks expanded, and a culture of respect and inclusion began to bloom. Lynn watched with humble pride as individuals rediscovered their worth and began to walk tall again, carrying with them the courage to face whatever storms might come. In the quiet moments when the city hummed softly outside, Lynn would reflect on the journey that had brought her here, from the depths of injustice and loss to this vibrant tapestry of hope and healing. It was a testament to the power of human connection, to the resilience born from compassion, and to the unbreakable spirit that refuses to be defined by adversity. In building this new community, Lynn was not just creating a refuge, she was lighting a path forward, a promise that even in the darkest times together we can find light, strength, and the courage to rebuild.